This business of lineage from teacher to pupil to second generation pupil is always fascinating to people who study the history of voice, but it can sometimes be misleading. I mean, any of us who teach dread being judged on the students who haven't listened, you know.
I think it's also important to say, though, that every voice has pretty much its own path. We can lay down the rules and say these rules must be followed, and I think that pretty much we should stick to all those rules, just like a pianist would who's starting out learning to play the piano. But I think certain voices mature faster, certain voice categories mature younger, so we have to not just say, oh, well, you're 25, you're over the hill.
Oh, no.
So, but then again, we also have to listen carefully if the 30-year-old is going to really start it soon, or if the 30-year-old maybe is going to miss the boat. It's very, very tricky to judge that, but we should never say, well, my friend is here, I should be there too. No, very, very different kinds.
Something we want to hear too is that individual characteristic of a voice. There are so many voices that sound pretty much all the same, but it's wonderful to hear a young voice that has a distinctive quality, a distinctive sound, something that you hear them sing it, that's so-and-so, as it has been with Carlos, or let's not ape the way other people sing, let's not try and copy the way people sing. Young singers should develop their own particular sound, and very often they'll find that they've got this distinctive quality.
And do you two feel, as some of us do, I think that sometimes that individual quality is something that if it went a little farther, it would almost be a fault. But having just the right amount of it gives an individuality to the voice that colors it.
Well, it's mostly the actual timbre, I think. I'm not talking about the interpretive ability of the voice or how they use the voice, but just the actual sound they make.
I'm thinking of, let's say, Tito Gobbi, for instance. I mean, a very particular color to that voice that strikes some ears as ugly, even. And yet, if you kind of get into it, it seems so beautiful.
The whole package was so great. The expression that he brought to it. And that's, of course, that's the other end of the spectrum. The expression has to be just as strong as the vocal talent. We have to bring them together and have them meet in the middle. And frankly, that's what's so difficult about plain old bel canto music, is singing all of those difficult roulades and runs and everything else, but making them be expressive.
Which they can be.
Which they're clearly written to be.
Yes.
Let me ask the two of you a question about range that I've been very curious to hear your thoughts on. I think it's right to say that up to about the Second World War, there were more typically sort of big-voiced sopranos who would sing maybe a trovatore, maybe Norma, to the extent that Norma was performed in those years, and who didn't really venture much or at all above the high C. Pansel.
There's plenty of them today too.
Well, sure, but I think it seems to me that was more or less a generalization that you could make about big-voiced sopranos earlier. And then there were much lighter-voiced sopranos who we sometimes call coloraturas, who would go on and sing the C sharp, the D, the E flat, maybe the E natural, and F. And then came this unusual phenomenon of Maria Callas, who had been trained by one of those very high sopranos and managed to get her very big voice to go on up to those notes. And since then, most notably Joan Sutherland, but a handful of others as well, there have been big-voiced sopranos singing above high C where they didn't used to be. And my question is this something that is an unusual feature that comes along in one voice out of many, or is it a matter of something that should be attempted with in training a soprano voice of that color?
Well, I think every voice, no matter whether it's big, small, or medium, should learn to sing coloratura and fioritura.
But
That
I'm
should
talking
be part
about
of
the
their
high
training.
notes, not
the high
the
notes.
coloratura,
Well,
the high notes, the notes above high C for a big soprano voice.
Oh, I think that they should be absolutely sought in the studio. I mean, one should really try to extend the voice as far as it'll go. Absolutely.
but
in the
don't use it
studio.
until it's secured, for
The
goodness
question
sake.
is how
secure
much
is
do you
it?
sing in public? How free do you get in public?
How high did you extend yours in the studio?
E flat, E natural above the staff,
And what's the highest that you sustained in public?
C. I maybe touched a D flat once in a while, but no.
I once shrieked an F sharp.
I was very cross. I can tell you one thing though, when I vocalized and extended my voice up to those notes, I knew I'd been there. I could feel it right here.
And was that one of the things that suggested to you that you didn't want to make a home up in that range?
No, it was not that. Not in that register, no, up there. It had to do with the around E, F sharp, G, around that area of the passage.
We're talking about right at the top of the treble staff,
Right.
which is often, it's sort of a place where the voice changes in its responsiveness, and so we call it a passaggio. A passage.
Sustaining that register was the one that told the tale for me.
In other words, you found it, you obviously had those notes and could sing them well, but you found it difficult to sustain
It over
too much
the
in
course of an evening. We have to judge by opera. That's the thing we have to judge by, because that's the thing that takes the great stamina and sustaining over the course of an evening.
Well, I had great problems sustaining a certain aria. What was it? With plaintive notes, an amorous moan. My husband was transposing at a concert because it was in a rather low key for me, and he was transposing, and right in the middle, suddenly I felt, I've got to wind my voice up. Why is it so difficult tonight? And in his transposition, he'd gone up a fifth instead. And I was singing up here, thinking, why is it so difficult? Try to relax and sing all the notes, and there's something wrong. What happened? Did I go off the rails? It was usually me that went off the rails. And afterwards, a very sheepish husband came and said, I'm terribly sorry.
But that's also, sometimes singers get a fixation about certain notes, and sometimes the teacher really has to trick them into moving things up or moving things down or whatever, and putting them into a key that they're, obviously, we hope they don't have absolute pitch in this case, but to trick them and to make them absolutely realize that they can sing that note. There's just some kind of mental problem.
It's a mental hang-up, it was with me. I mean, I could sing around the house those notes, not if I started to stand by the piano and know what I'm singing. Go away from the piano, Richard would say, go away. And he'd sort of then transpose things up, and there you are, you see what you were singing? Because I did not have perfect pitch.
I remember once reading something that Kala said, that sometimes she said you just have to think that high note an octave lower. And I thought, damn it, how did she figure that out? I figured that out myself.
No, you mustn't let the voice go. This is awful line. This, again, control. You cannot let the voice go too high. You cannot have the feeling of the voice being in too high an area too soon. Otherwise, you'll never make the acuti. You cannot also make the voice have the voice too low in the register, or you won't make the acuti. You have to really work on these passages and know exactly what position your voice is in. And some people, I'm sure, don't think about it. They get up there and the voice is really not solid in it's not solid in their mind how they're going to sing this.
By what position to sing a given note in or a given part of the range in? Do you mean simply having such control over the different ways that you might sing that note that you can choose the one that is advantageous and cultivate it?
No, I think it's really a matter of having worked on joining the registers, eradicating them if you like, and knowing that you have a complete line of the voice from the top to the bottom and back again.
Question, Joan.
Yeah.
Eradicating the registers, does that mean that in the beginning
You can't eradicate.
you know where they are, though?
Exactly.
You certainly know where the registers
It's the
are.
mind again, dear.
Right.
The mind. It's controlling the break between the registers.
But we are saying that there are registers.
Of course there are.
Well, since we're saying that, let's say, when you say where they are they? Where
Depends
does
on
the
the
chest
voice.
voice?
It depends on the person.
I think Garcia really had it in his book. You know, he really shows, you know, that the register change between chest and head voice is around E natural, and he says, you know, for a contralto, it's F is the chest voice, and he puts in parenthesis F sharp, but he moves it down as the voice is higher.
Yeah, he seems though all the variations are clustered very close to each other.
Very close,
right there
within
around
two notes,
E, F, F sharp.
2 half steps, so a
Yes.
step and a half.
Yes.
And then the other register break is up around E, F, F sharp, around there.
I've heard it proposed that in small ways or large ways, the voice sort of changes in responsiveness about twice per octave.
I think around C sharp, treble C sharp, the voice is really starting to lift into, and that's why famous singers like Pasta, Molly Brown, this is what my opinion anyway, why they started to get big holes in their voices around A natural, middle voice, B flat, B natural, and they wrote, you know, many people wrote that unfortunately she developed a big hole in her voice, dead notes as it were, you know, where the registers just weren't convening. And I think, I don't know what you think, Joan, about this, and you will, but I think that in the last century, beginning of this century, they really did not amalgamate those registers like we try to now. This is where I think we have come amazingly a step further. I think they really just banged into their chest voice. Just let it, you know, let the break happen.
Yeah, I think you're probably right.
Some for sure. I mean, the ideal was always held up of uniting them, but
Right.
But as we know, sometimes when an ideal is preached most loudly is when most people are transgressing against it. So, yeah, I think that's probably true. But we do have several centuries of people saying E, F, F sharp, and with the migrations of pitch over time, I mean, that could move it a little bit as
But
well.
how often, for instance, do you hear a young man singing, and you know, you can tell what's happening, say, on F sharp, whether this man is a tenor or not. You know, it's almost always clear.
Yes.
You know, immediately.
Yes, and if you have someone who should be a tenor who is trying to remain a baritone, what happens is the voice just goes all wrong there, and he can seem like a baritone without high notes, you know, when really he needs to be a tenor, because trying to sing the high notes in a baritone-ish way, they just won't go to the place that nature wants them.
And now what are we saying what happens? Then what happens on that F sharp that makes it change?
That makes it change for a tenor?
That makes the register change. What happens? There's a lift in the back, the soft palate.
In other words, the characteristics of head voice translated into the terms of the modern tenor, but the characteristics of head voice enter into the voice at that point and enable it to go on rising past that passage.
But has it been creeping in already, say, around D? You know, C sharp, D, just barely creeping in.
I think in a way, every semitone is a new register in terms of you have to sort of lift it compared to the one before.
I agree.
Well, don't say that or you'll lose the line. You'll be thinking,
But then you have to make it not be
you have to
noticed.
iron it out again.
That's where
yes.
portamento comes in.
Legato, dear legato.